Cool Hand Podcast, something you got to deal with. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host. My name is Q. We have another special guest in the show. On our last episode, we had somebody, a young sister from Chi-Town, a Windy City. And before we were actually on air with the guest that I have today, I was saying how the people from the Chi are treating me well with these interviews. So we have another sister from the Chi. Guest, can you please introduce yourself?
Yo, what's up? We're in the crib. That's what we say in Chicago. We in the crib. So my name is Ayumi. I'm from Chicago, Southsider. Born and raised, we out here. I appreciate being on this podcast, I feel like I'm in very good hands, the cool hands.
Oh wow, I'm feeling good already. I'm feeling good. Welcome to the show. Now we were talking beforehand, and you're not even in the crib. Now she's in the crib, Chi-Town vernacular, but she's not. She's OT right now,
Yes.
this makes this interview even more special because I didn't know. If I knew you were out of town, I would have been like, oh no, it's no big deal. Woo woo, we could schedule it some other time. But thank you for taking the time out to do this.
For sure.
All right, now Yumi, you're familiar with the podcast. I've interviewed some of your friends. I'm sure you've seen a couple episodes. I have a lot of people with musical talent. Some people do this, do that. I had a DJ on, stuff like that. But you're interesting just in general. You can see, I'm sure, I'm sure like the viewer, if they're watching this for the first time or never saw you before, they can see your hair, they can see your makeup, they can see that you put yourself together. You got a nice background.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. So yes. So just out the gate, we can see the charisma in your appearance. So I want to talk about you, your background, what you do. What do you do creatively?
I consider myself to be eclectic. I do a lot. Um, my main focus is on like cinematography, and I do paint, but I started off doing like vlogs and stuff like that. So um, in my previous days, I have a vlog, Ayumi Afro Asia, on YouTube, and basically I did traveling and just sharing tips on specifically learning Korean. I've spent the past 9 years of my life um, within the Korean culture and moving back and forth between the States and Korea. Um, and I just like to share my experience, especially a lot of people who don't get the opportunity to travel or get to learn of another culture, especially one that's way different from American culture, and being able to see the similarity between our cultures, especially for like Black culture. People don't realize how similar Koreans are to Black people, and it's amazing. And I just wanted to share that, like that aspect of the culture and the people. And it's been an awesome experience. I still have like a lot of vlogs I have not posted, but I just like to do that. But I've been working more on short films lately. And I have a current collaboration coming up with Chlorophyll Collins, someone I've worked with before. It's going to be a short film featuring his two EPs that was on his previous cassette. Um, so yeah, that's been my current art form. But I've definitely worked on like artwork and stuff like that, like painting and photography and things like that. If it's art, I'm gonna dabble in it. I just like to get my hands dirty in paints and film and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm not a specific kind of artist. Can't put me, I guess, in a box, as they say.
Yeah. So you dibble dabble and you mess around, and we'll talk about some more of the things that you mentioned before. So thank you for giving us that introduction. Now let's talk about your just origins growing up.
Mhm.
So you're from Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay, what was life like growing up in Chicago?
Interesting. So my background, my family is very diverse in ethnicity and race. Um, Black and Japanese, specifically Ethiopian and Japanese. But I grew up not around Black people. As a kid, I grew up in a Mexican and Chinese neighborhood. And that definitely builds a different type of character than the usual neighborhood. So Chicago is, as a lot of people may not know, even though it's diverse, it's very split up. So it's still segregated, even though it's a huge blend of people. So we go by neighborhoods. So where I lived at, I was on the south side, specifically near Gage Park, which is like a just an area that is pretty known. But this area was split up, very split up between Black people on one side of a park, and then the other side was Latino and Chinese because the Latino area was closer to Chinatown. So there was no blending of the cultures. You couldn't dare go across the park if you weren't from where you're from. I felt pretty safe growing up, mind you. Like it wasn't like I had to be scared or anything like that, but it was just not known to like mix up the cultures. So growing up, I didn't know what it was like to be Black. Everyone thought I was Afro Latina, so and they would not listen to me when I said I wasn't. So that being said, I didn't know what it was like to kind of like grow up with people of my own and kind of like experience what it really was like to be Black in Chicago.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was different.
Thank you for saying that. When I was talking to Jayla about what was life like growing up in Chicago, these days Chicago gets such a negative rap because
Yeah,
of what people see on their computers. Not I ain't even gonna say TV, what they see on their computers and social media. All they know about Chicago is one thing. If you're a little older, and I'm young, but you know what I mean. But if you're a little older, you think Chicago Bulls,
right.
the Bears,
The Cubs or the Bears.
the
Not
Bears,
the
the
Bears.
Cubs, all
Yeah,
of that, White Sox,
right.
right? All right. All
Yes.
right. I don't watch baseball. So so yeah, you think about that Michael Jordan and all that stuff. But nowadays for people, it's just you have OTF, GBE, this, that. So even it's just nice to hear something else about Chicago that doesn't have to do with the modern pop culture thing.
Right.
So and I just learned something new. Now, with what you said, how did you fit in as you were growing up?
I did. I
Okay.
never did. So I didn't get to be around. So like growing up, okay, so grew up in the 90s and I was in like high school in the early 2000s. So um going from transitioning from my like elementary school life, which was with all the Latinos and Chinese people. And I grew up as a punk rocker. We all know like early 2000s punk rockers were a thing. I wore all black and like, painted my nails black and stuff like that, listening to, Papa Roach and whatever other rock band Gorillas and stuff like that. Like that was
Mhm.
my thing. And so again, that is not, especially in that time, a normal thing for Black people. So how I groomed myself, even my mother was still like, huh? Like, what is this? I don't
Mhm.
understand it. And I'm just like, these are my people. And, but when I got into high school, I chose to go to a high school that was totally opposite of where I grew up. Um, my school was well blended, but it had a lot of Black kids in it, even though there were other races like white and Asian and stuff like that too. But it was the first time that I was around a large group of Black people because in my high school, I mean, my elementary school, if you look at my graduation picture, I'm the only Black girl.
Wow.
Literally the only Black girl. There was one Black boy in my school, but if you look at it, it's just like there's no Black people. So it's like I didn't understand what it was like. So like the only hip hop and stuff like that I knew was like old school hip hop. My dad was a DJ growing up, so he started in like the 80s being a DJ and stuff. So I'm used to like records with like hip hop and stuff. But like at that time, rap and stuff, I didn't know it. I didn't understand unless it was on the radio. Then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I know that song. But if you like threw on someone's CD or something like that, I'm like, who is this?
Mhm.
I don't know these songs. So when I got into high school, I was exposed to all of that. I got exposed to Black music and the culture and stuff like that a lot more. And I guess I was able to more embrace myself,
Mhm.
but I was still different.
Yes,
I was still different.
absolutely. Yeah, that's you have a very like a very interesting circumstance. All right, this is what I wrote down. So Ethiopian and Japanese descent, okay, but grew up in a Mexican and Chinese neighborhood
Right,
or area.
right.
And nobody mixed with each other. So you have this, you got the black chick around the Chinese and Mexican people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's crazy. It's crazy. Then you're a punk rocker at that. And
Yes.
you're the punk rocker who people think is African Latina, like, or Afro Latina, excuse me. I got to be real PC. So wow. Okay. So what was it like growing up around the other different cultures, growing up around the Chinese and Mexican people?
I think that's what helped me to kind of embrace other cultures because although I am what I am, I don't necessarily care too much. Like every culture has its own ups and downs. It's beautiful and then it's ugly. I really like to observe people. I'm a people watcher, even though that sounds creepy. Um,
Oh no, 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 I
but
get
I
you.
love to observe people and see how they react and stuff like that, and also like see how language um, actually is a part of a culture. So just growing up around like Mexican people, they're very prideful of being Mexican. And so my neighborhood, very unique. So there's Chicago is definitely has many Mexican neighborhoods. But specifically my Mexican neighborhood was very like fresh out of Mexico. So,
Okay.
and that saying being, we had chickens and goats and just wildlife roaming our neighborhood, and nobody's like look twice. The cops would roll through, you know, just checking the neighborhood out. No one would care. The kids like me would just roam around freely. Parents did not care where we were because they knew someone else would see us somewhere in the neighborhood. So like how maybe our parents grew up in like the 70s or 60s, however old people's parents are, um, they were able to kind of like just roam freely. Well, when I was growing up, that wasn't necessarily the case. Like your parents would still be like, okay, as long as I can see you outside, you know, the window or something, like then it's fine. But like I really had the opportunity to be free with them because the neighborhood was so close knit. Everyone being from Mexico and just trying to make it here as first generations, trying to, you know, make a better income and a better lifestyle for their family. So it was it felt like home easily. I didn't feel like, even though I was different, I still felt a part of the community and I was safe within that community. So I got to learn, you know, the language. I'm not good at it by any means. I suck at Spanish, but the music, the food, the the clothing, all of that stuff, like is something that is still a part of me. Growing up at that time specifically, it's nowhere near the same as when I was there, but um, it was a whole vibe. I appreciate growing up at that time where I was.
Thank you. I think that's really cool myself because you don't, I live in Pittsburgh. So you have, thankfully, I was able to live in Georgia for a little bit and
Right.
see different. They have Mexican and Portuguese for the most part outside of the black and white people, but up here you got black and white. We have there's not too much diversity. We have some refugees from other countries who came here, and I got to be around some of them,
Right.
which is nice, and be exposed to a different culture and just a whole different way of life. But you don't see too much diversity up in up here, so I think it's very nice to be exposed to other cultures at such a young age. I think it builds a lot of character and helps you see around the world without going around the world, if that
Right.
makes sense.
For sure. No, most definitely.
Now, creatively, now you dibble and dabble in things. But when did it all start? Just getting into creative things in general. When did, whether it was the painting or the cinematography, when did that come about in your life?
Okay. So, parents, my dad, DJ, music producer. That's all I saw growing up. I have pictures of me being a toddler, like messing with his records and stuff like that. So music was always there. And then my mother, interior designer, she also has done like hair shows and stuff like that. So she herself is an artist. My mother, I grew up with her doing murals on walls and designing um, different shows and stuff like that, and being a part of like movie productions. Every time they would come in Chicago, she would do like the hairstyling and like sets and stuff like that. So all that kind of stuff was always around me when I was little. And then as I got older, funny thing, usually in like school, like you're not cool if you're a part of like plays and stuff like that. But theater in my school was a thing. Like it was a
Okay.
big thing. And I was like, I'm going to be like, whatever type of actor. My school, like my music teacher did all of our theater plays and stuff like that. So he would get different producers and stuff like that and writers to come actually view us little kids in elementary school, because he was like, I got a dream for these kids.
Good for
He was
him.
like living vicariously through us a little bit. But he would do these crazy productions, and I got to be in like The Music Man, Cinderella, Once Upon This Island, whatever that was called. I can't remember all the way, but I've been in quite a few like theater plays. And so the whole production, we actually filmed all of our plays and stuff like that, and they were done right.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like your average, I guess, elementary school play where someone's crying and like the set is falling apart and stuff. Like, no, Cinderella was a dope play. We did, my teacher made a whole carriage for Cinderella to roll through.
Wow.
So we were in there. So all of that stuff, I guess, like just being around my parents and then dabbling into theater got me into like just wanting to dip my toes into every aspect of art. Whenever I'm inspired, I just go for it pretty much.
Hmm. I like that. So you're OT, you're OT, you dibble and dabble. But the one thing about your background is I don't know where you're at, and it doesn't matter. That's not, but one thing that I do know is that you contributed to your background. Is that correct? Okay, so I guess like where did that even come from? Like the room you're in outside of home, you had a
Uh
part in this.
okay, so like this is my parents' house.
Okay.
I guess I don't know.
Oh
So yeah,
yeah.
I
Thank
just
you.
some
This is
artwork.
okay.
Okay, so also I'm the type of artist that is like, instead of buying something, I will definitely try to make it. My
Gotcha.
mother, my mother is a handy woman. So we build stuff really quick. We will paint it before we buy it. Um, so I was my mother moved to a certain place in Indiana, and she was just like, okay, well, my parents, they both moved, of course, but my mother is a designer. So she's like, feel free to design this one room. Have I finished it? No, because I am not here usually, but I was inspired by some artwork I saw in Urban Outfitters, but it was like $500 for the same thing that I have on my wall. I'm not paying $500 for that. when I can just get some paint that I already own and just slap it on the wall. So yeah, I have free range of decorating in my parents' home all the time. My mother, um, she advocates my creativity, and we kind of like both feed off of each other a lot of times. So that's kind of how that transpired.
Okay. And when it comes to, excuse me, I'm over here belching. I'm gonna have to cut that out. Anyway, I felt it coming. I'm like,
I feel
all
you.
right,
I feel you. It's all good.
all right. So when it comes to just getting into art and things like that, so you do the painting, and although you're out of town, we have a mutual associate, contemporary, or friend, whatever you want to
Right.
call it, Chlorophyll Collins. Now, somebody that we've had on the show, um, the homie from Corpus Christi.
Yes.
Now, he came out with a tape cassette not too long ago, some months ago, and I don't know if this will interfere with the lighting, but I've shown this on my Instagram page, Cool Hand Podcast, if you guys want to find it. Now, you had something to do with this. Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah. I was never expecting to be asked to do something as great as that. I was like really honored to be a part of his project. Um, he's definitely the homie, and I was super happy to do this for him. He wanted to, he had an idea of how he wanted his artwork to be done, and we kind of just worked on it together. There was that little bit of a, what do you call it? Little personal tidbit that's in the inside with his dog, Mochi. Mochi gives all the vibes. I love Mochi. But we had been basically talking about his music the whole time that he's been putting his EPs and stuff together. And I appreciate that my friends actually care about my opinion when it comes to their music. But I had certain like vibes from his music and stuff like that. And I was giving him little pointers and stuff like that about how I was perceiving the music. And so he just wanted me to portray that on his cassette, and it just came together. We talked about it a bit. A lot of those images that are actually on there are images that he's used for previous covers for his songs. So I just kind of like, did my own little twist on the images that he already had, and I think it came out pretty cool. It was great. So my
It
first
did.
time doing something like that, so I'm pleased with it, and I was more happy that he was happy about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is awesome. Like, this is, I really like it. This was a limited edition, so y'all can't get this. Yeah, it's
Not at
too
all.
late.
Not at all.
Yeah, y'all can't find this. I'm gonna rub it in y'all face too. Like, y'all can't. We got an
Exclusive.
exclusive. That's a fact. Yeah, y'all can't get that. But anyway, yeah, like, it's super cool. Like, I love this thing. Like, I own two cassettes, and this is one of them, because and it's like a collector's item. This is nice. So you did a great job with that.
I had no longer owned a cassette player because I was like, I don't need no cassette player no more. Who uses them?
Right.
And I was like, I'm gonna get a cassette player just so I can play my homie's cassette.
Mm, real friends. How many of us? Or did he say how many of us or how many of them? Who cares? Yeah, I forget. Let me not try to go quoting lyrics and but okay. And when it comes to artwork, I just want to stay a little bit longer on the art. How much emotion goes into your artwork? Now, I don't know all the pieces that you've made, or I don't have a sample, but when it does come to your artwork, how do you go about creating?
So I think the last time we had like a, what is it? I just call it like our art Zoom thing. I don't
Yeah.
know, art collaboration
Yeah.
Zooms. I showed like a 3-piece canvas I did. Um, I think all of my emotion goes into my artwork because I'm not an emotional speaker. I don't exude emotion with my conversation, and not even really my facial expressions either. So all of my emotions go into my artwork. I do like I have plenty of like canvases and other like books and stuff like that that I do artwork in, and usually that's the way that I can express my emotion. Um, so my three-piece that I did, um, it was, and I don't have the images with me, but it was three pieces, and they were kind of inspired by that Japanese art like waves and Jhené Aiko. Jhené Aiko, I feel that chick on so many levels. Um, and I don't know if you remember one of her EPs, or I don't know if it's her EP or her album, um, Sailing, Sailed Out, I think, one of the others. She's like walking into the ocean.
Yes.
Um, that whole like EP kind of like inspired me to do that three-piece. Um, I'm very, I don't know, it sounds weird, but I really love the moon and I love the ocean. And all of those together, I feel like what do you call it? I don't know how to really explain it, but I'm drawn to a lot of nature stuff. A lot of people call me a hippie. So the expressions that I was able to pull out of that just was, it was like a new beginning type piece for me. I was able to express that because, and I mentioned this in some other artwork that I'm doing, or my upcoming project, with like mental health and stuff like that. The pandemic did a whole lot of like to my whole mental, and I'm sure for a lot of other people, the pandemic
Yeah.
was like, it did some stuff to us that we were like, am I crazy? So um I had to do some reflecting, and that like three-piece artwork I did was kind of like a reflection of what I was feeling at the time, and kind of like allowing myself to put it on and like push it away. So that's kind of what I do with my work. It's whatever I'm feeling, legit.
Mhm. Gotcha. Thank you. Now, on in the same thing, the same theme of artwork, but a different type of art, we have the cinematography, short film aspect of your creativity. Now, how did that come about?
Uh, Going back to my theater days, putting together a production and stuff like that. And I don't want to call myself a film buff, because like I don't like, I don't recall everything. I just recall like certain directors that I really like and their productions and stuff like that. Right now, I'm gonna say his name backwards, I feel like, but Anderson West, his films, um, what is it? The Budapest, and he has a new one coming out, the French something. I'm bad with names, terrible at
That's
names.
okay.
Um, but I'm really drawn to certain cinematography and wanting to express myself in those same ways. Like I said, I'm not at all ever tooting my own horn, because I just like to learn. I really like to see if I can execute something and challenge myself with it, and see how I can express myself with it, and hopefully others would reciprocate it, in their own way, and have appreciation for it. So I really wanted to use music that I've been inspired by, and add a vision or visual to the music I was hearing, which is why I collaborated with Chlorophyll Collins on this. Um, he doesn't make his own like videos. We have his little, like videos he makes um, on Instagram when he's basically trying to promote the music,
Mhm.
but I feel like his music has a story to it, that everyone who doesn't do well with hearing or audio and hearing a story, I want them to be able to see his story. So he is also featured in this little featured film of his music. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to put it out there.
What goes into cinematography? How do you go about creating?
So I always start off with like slides, not what slides, but like I draw out my scenes, what I feel like I want to portray. I listen to the music, of course, to go along with it because I want to put that specific emotion to the sound.
Mhm.
Um, because to me, music is, I mean, to a lot of people, it's language. And so everyone's not always fluent in that language. So in order for me to make sure that everyone is understanding what's being felt at those moments, I need to make sure that that scene specifically fits that emotion. So I go down the line of my scenes of how I want them to be portrayed. I pick a location that I'm going to film at. Part of the film is also featuring someone who was featured on one of Chlorophyll Collins' tracks, which is Jayla Day. We filmed a portion of it like about 2 months ago. She had an awesome guitar riff on there. And I just wanted to portray the feeling and emotion that was coming from that. So after we get through the whole settings and stuff like that, I think the majority of it is my editing.
Mhm.
That's where it gets deep, is where I edit, because the filming, the better the film is, the better that it's clean, and um, I don't have to chop up the film as much as possible, get a clean, good take. Um, I feel like my editing it would be much better. So that's been the whole thing behind my productions. That is, again, I am nowhere near a like pro at this. I am like merely just learning as I'm going, and it's been a cool journey. I've been appreciating the whole learning about film and its and cameras and stuff like that and how they work. So it's been pretty cool.
Okay. Now, what do you shoot on, by the way? What do you shoot your videos on?
I have quite a few things I shoot on.
Okay.
I have a Nikon, and don't quote me on this because I don't remember exactly the name, a specific name of the Nikon. But I also use my iPhone because iPhone gives a very good quality
Yes.
for filming. So, and it's very easy to carry around. I also have a old like film camera that I was given from my dad. Also don't know the name of this camera, but
Hmm.
I just know it has a good quality. I love the way it films. And so those are so far what I've been filming on.
All right. And when can we expect something from you? Eh,
So
yeah.
for the film will be out. I'm trying to make sure that I get everything filmed by the end of this month. So September, that project should be out.
Wow. Uh,
Mid-September or third week of September is the plan.
okay. Third week of September. Oh boy. All right. We'll be yeah, yeah. That's give Kayla and I an anniversary present. Our our anniversary is in September. We'll take your film as a present. So no pressure. But
Okay.
but you know, so okay, we're looking forward to that. Do we have a name or anything? Now, if it's still secret, you do not have to say it.
Yeah, I just want to keep it how, like, we just know there's a collaboration short film between me and Chlorophyll Collins
It's
featuring
coming soon.
Jayla Day.
It's coming soon, y'all. Just hold on. Hold on, y'all.
Yes.
All right. Now, a couple more things I want to talk about. Which one should we do first? Here, let's do the podcast. Let's do the podcast. And then after that, I want to talk about your vlogging and journey around the world from Busan, you're getting trapped in
Yes,
Shanghai.
you really did your research, bro.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Like it was don't give
Everyone's
me
always like, where were you at, North Korea?
don't give me too much credit. Yeah, don't got a little bit of research. So well, let's talk about the podcast because you also have that coming up, which is pretty cool. Podcast is I like doing it. So yeah, when did that come about and what are the plans for that?
So this branched off from my vlogs. So as much as I like traveling and filming and stuff like that, it's a lot of work. Filming by yourself, as well as if you're an introverted person, you also can feel kind of like weird being in public, filming yourself. And I never really want my vlogs to actually just be about like me and being like my life. Like I'm not that kind of person. I really wanted to show things, but it's kind of difficult filming by yourself, being in other countries by yourself and like doing all of that. So I really still want to like have discussion and like speak on things that I have experienced as well as like other friends and stuff like that. So this podcast is kind of like branched off of that, but I do this thing with my friends on a regular basis, where I do voice notes instead of texting. I hate texting. Like, I know like we were like the start generation of like texting and stuff, but I
Mhm.
absolutely hate it. Do not like to text. So instead, I send voice notes, and my voice notes get long because I just be talking and then I ramble. And so I've had quite a few people um, like express that they like my voice. Why? I don't know. Don't know. Don't hear it. Um, and I mean, I used to do, this is just an little ad, what? I'm just adding something to that. Um, when I used to work for a tech company, I ended up going from my tech job to doing voiceover videos, which is still on their website. My voice is still there. Um, and so I'm used to doing, I guess, for like production stuff where my voice is being heard. So um, my friends just kind of encouraged the uh, the podcast because they're like, "Yo, I really like these conversations. You always get deep, even no matter what the topic is. Somehow it gets deep." And I finally listened to my friends and started this podcast.
Okay. And now unless I'm tripping, an episode didn't come out already, right?
Oh, no, no,
Okay, okay. I'm glad. I would have been embarrassed if I would have came on here
no.
and not I didn't see any posts, no story, no nothing. So okay. So that's coming soon too, y'all. Just
Yes,
be
yes.
patient, be patient. Let this
So
yeah.
the first episode for that one will be out sooner, way sooner than the video. So this podcast, I actually recorded 3 episodes already.
Oh yeah,
So
you're on the
I'm just in
ball.
the middle of just editing and just making sure. So the podcast will be some like 1 episode a month will be on YouTube, just for the visuals and stuff like that. And then the other ones would just be simply just voice. And I'm going to put them on multiple platforms. It'll all be like announced on my Instagram.
I'm here for it. Now, what will you be talking about? And you'll have guests as well, I'm guessing. Okay,
Yes.
okay. So what's that going to be all about, or what do we have to look forward to with these episodes that you have coming?
So they're pretty fun. All of the discussions have to do with like one theme, and of course we branch off of it. It's mainly just the theme is really to just start up the conversation. The first episode is called "Waste Don't Waste My Time," and so I have a couple of my homies from Chicago, and we're discussing it. Mind you, the title of my podcast is Liquid Therapy. Um, so, and it doesn't mean you have to be drinking. You don't have to drink alcohol. You can be drinking milk if you want. You can drink orange juice. I don't care. You can drink whatever you want. But we're drinking while we're having our discussion. And um, the topic of Don't Waste My Time doesn't just have to do with us talking about romantic relationships, but also platonic relationships. We're all I have yet to reach 30. I'm 5 months away from it. So, um, but all of my friends, we're all like transitioning into our 30s. And once when you're transitioning into, another age bracket, I'll say, um, life starts to change, friendships start to change, relationships start to change, and stuff like that. So we're just kind of like discussing that. But the overall podcast just kind of discusses um, whatever is like currently happening within life in general, whether it's relationships, financial things. I feel like there's a lot we can learn from one another, and it's just stirring up conversation with each other. So that's kind of what it is.
Liquid Therapy podcast. It's coming sooner than you think. What y'all be drinking on there? What y'all like to drink?
So some of us had I think we had shots, did take shots, some tequila shots just to,
Okay.
warm yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
But sangria, we got wine on there, whiskey, some of us are whiskey drinkers. Um, got some honey jack. That is one of my faves. Um, so yeah, we just on there sipping.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. I feel that. Okay, so okay, Liquid Therapy podcast coming soon. And you had mentioned before that, excuse me, that the podcast, the inception of the idea came from your friends and the voice notes and the vlogging, which I want to talk about in conjunction with your traveling. So let's when did the traveling come about? We have your background, you being Ethiopian and Japanese. So when did the longing or the action that you took, when did that all come about in traveling and going around?
Okay, so like traveling, I've always traveled. My family, sorry. um, my family when I was younger would always take me places. When I was really, really young and I was getting to know my Japanese half of my family, I stayed in Japan as a kid for a few years. I was supposed to live there more permanently, but life kind of like happened and I had to come back to the States. And since then, like I at least once in a year I have to get out of Chicago and go somewhere, and I try to literally get out of the US in its entirety. Um, but when I turned 21, I made it a goal to officially learn some kind of language. And it was specifically to, serve where the need was greater. I was like, I gotta do something. Like I am not about to waste my youth like
Mhm.
being in Chicago in my own little neighborhood and ignoring the rest of the world, because like being in Chicago, you will forget the rest of the world exists.
Gotcha.
So I chose a language. I think like Korean wasn't my first choice at all. I was gonna just deal with Japanese. I was like, I already know a little bit of Japanese, like I can just branch
Mhm.
off of that. But there wasn't necessarily a local need where I was, and um, I somehow kept running into so many Korean people, especially like I was in school still at the time, like I was in a university, so Korean just became something that was like being thrown in my face constantly, and so I was like, okay, I guess I can give it a try, and so once I got to um, serving in Korean, I was like, okay, so what is next from being here? Gotta go to Korea, I guess. So my
Yeah.
first time going was in 2016. And
Okay.
that's kind of where I started going back and forth between here and Korea since then. So,
Okay. And you documented these things, some of these things.
right.
So Korea. I don't even know where to start with Korea. So what is life like in Korea? What's the culture like being there?
Life is simple. Okay. I feel like so many things they have done right that Americans just have not even thought about. Like, it's just so, like, first of all, the country's so small. If you look at like the state of Texas, Korea, South Korea itself can fit in there like at least three times.
Hmm.
My state is bigger than South Korea. So like I feel like when we're traveling here in the US, in order to go somewhere and visit, you need to plan out like a whole entire weekend at least, because you got to think about the time it's going to take for you to fly from one place to the other. If you want to drive across country, it's going to at least take you a day and some hours to get across country if you're driving straight without
Right.
stopping. Korea, on the other hand, you can get from one place to the other within like a couple of hours. I can
Wow.
go from the furthest south all the way to the furthest north within 3.5 hours on a bullet train. And if
Three
I
and a
want
half
to go
hours.
slower, I can take 5 hours.
Okay, well that is simple. So that's simple. Man, I wish things were that simple, like traveling, but that's life. So what else, what other simplicities were you able to observe?
Korea is very well blended with nature and city life.
Okay.
So the city that I was living in was called Busan. It reminded me a lot of my grandfather's hometown, Osaka, in Japan. Busan is what was called a refugee like area during the Korean War. So many people flocked to that area. It also was where our temporary Bethel was at during the war. So many cultures are down there, and the accent is what I fell in love with, the dialect. It reminded me of Japanese. It's the language, of course, is not the same, but the way they speak sounds a lot like Japanese. So for a lot of other Koreans, they are confused when they hear people from Busan speak. They're like, what the heck are you talking about? But being there, everything's well blended. The city is called Busan because san in Korean is mountain. The bu part has to do something with like a kettle, tea kettle or something like that.
Okay.
Still not too like, I still don't fully understand what that means, but they're kind of like just mountains everywhere. If you are walking around, like the high-rise buildings like are all built on mountains. Everything
Okay.
is built within the mountains. Like I think we build around stuff in the US or we just bulldoze it down. No, they live on top of mountains and you're
Hmm.
walking consistently on paved streets or, you know, um, it's just like somehow you feel like you're still a part of nature, even though you're in a full blown, like huge city. And um, even other simple things, it's like food costs super cheap. I've never thought I would spend so less on food and it's so much more. um, I can share a meal for $10 with someone
Wow.
and we'd have like a full course meal. Like that's not something you can get here. You can't even get that from McDonald's.
Maybe two 4 for 4s, and
Exactly.
you're pushing it
Exactly.
with tax. Yeah, like
Exactly. And it's healthy. Everything's healthy. The lifestyle's healthy. Um, like it's just a comfortable place. You don't need to speak the language to be there.
okay.
It's just a plus if you do, because you can kind of like feel immersed in the country. You don't look like, it doesn't feel like you're looking from the outside in. um so just being able to be there, being able to travel, see everything, like I said, nature's everywhere. Food is just amazing. Like that was the one thing that connected Black people to them, was that we have like a similar struggle within history that kind of like are the same. So the same way they cook food is kind of reminds me of like soul food. You really feel the love in the food. You really feel like the struggles of the past in that food. Um, the culture is kind of centered around food and like sharing food and stuff like that. So you feel all of that while being there. And I just always like advise people to, like, if you ever can get a chance to go somewhere, go to Korea, because you are not going to regret it whatsoever.
Thank you for that. What's the pop culture like?
Uh, Stressful. I don't understand how um people keep up with it. Like American pop culture, like you'll get an album out of an artist and like you won't get another album for like 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
K-pop, these folks give out a new album every season. Their promo videos go crazy. Every single member is like 17 members in groups. And I'm like, how do you remember all these people? And it just keeps going. Like their pop culture moves so fast, but they learned the recipe to success, literally, because their fans are so devout. Like I have kids that want to learn Korean from me just because they want to learn what the lyrics mean to a song or
Wow.
just to pronounce the lyrics properly. And it's just it's insane. I don't think we have that much of devout fans when it comes to American pop culture.
Yeah, just on Twitter.
Yeah.
Just on Twitter. And
Just on Twitter.
yeah, that's it. Just on Twitter and social media. They don't
Everybody go crazy on Twitter with everything.
exactly. So yeah. So what's one of the biggest things that if there was any lesson or something that you learned from your travels, whether it was as a youngster going to Japan or growing up older and going to Korea and learning Korean, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned or realizations you've come to just in general?
That people are not different no matter where you live. Even though our cultures can be seen as different from the outside, once you immerse yourself in someone else's culture, you realize how similar you are. And you realize that we're all literally still speaking the same language, which is the human language. And we just want to be understood. So a lot of people, and I was just talking about this on my podcast, how people romanticize other cultures or other races because they don't know what is the full details of someone's culture or their language. And they're like, oh my goodness, I love Japanese culture. And it's like, what do you love about it? Do you love anime? Do you love sushi? Like, is that what you're talking about? Because they have the same struggles as everyone dealing with the same stuff. Like the artwork, we all have similar artwork styles and stuff like that, depending on the era. And it's like all of that stuff, we all tied together at some point. And that's something that I appreciate. Like when I'm in Busan, I had one sister tell me like, oh, I really want to travel to like a Latin country or something like that. And she's like, I don't see any beauty in my country. Like I don't see, like they don't have the same structural buildings of like Greece and stuff like that. And I took her to a certain area in her own city, and I was like, you don't see the similarity. And the colors, like they have like a lot of monochromatic coloring in Busan. It's a very colorful area, and I'm like, this just reminds me of like Latin countries. They love bright colors and stuff like that because it makes them feel better about where they are and stuff like that. So all of that is just something that I was able to pull, is that we're all just people. We just out here just trying to survive in these streets.
Right. Sometimes we could take where we're from or our surroundings for granted.
Right.
I think that's everywhere. Like here in America, we're used to a certain standard.
Right.
I know, I ain't rich. Look at that old school air conditioner we got.
Yeah, I want to.
It like, you know what I mean? But you go somewhere else and they might have a fan and they're just using their windows.
Right.
Like we can look at something we see as dumb or insignificant, and it's a totally different situation somewhere else, but they're looking at our situation the complete opposite way.
Exactly.
It's just like an ongoing cycle. That's my personal opinion. But yeah, find the beauty. I guess find the beauty in where you're at, folks. I guess that's a lesson.
You gotta love life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you know what? This is how we're gonna wrap this up. I always like to ask people at the very end if there's anything I missed. But one more thing, you're into your clothes, you're into your look, you're into your fashion. That's the last thing I want to ask you. When did that come about? Because you've been through different phases. You've been through the punk rock, you've been through this and that. How did what's up? What happened? How'd you get into being the fashionista person that you are now?
Fashionista thing. Wow. You are just giving me so much hype. I appreciate you, man.
This is the Cool
Uh,
Hand Podcast. Something you got to deal with.
um, so actually I went to school so okay, long story short, 16, I was modeling. I got signed to a small agency here in Chicago. I started traveling. I usually did runway, and I really enjoyed fashion, but to have a better life, especially spiritually, modeling was not the route that to go career wise.
Yes.
But I always still had a love for clothes and fabric and stuff like that, and just being a part of the fashion industry. And so after getting tired of biology in university, I chose to be a fashion business major. And I ended up working for a company called BCBG, became a stylist with them. And for about 6 years, I was a personal stylist. I styled for Chicago Fire, and like a few other little films that were here in Chicago and stuff like that. So uh, honestly, my fashion is just an expression of how I'm feeling that day.
Gotcha.
If I look crazy, that's because I'm feeling crazy, I guess. So it's whatever the vibe is that day.
I hear that. Okay, I'm glad I asked that. I'm glad I didn't forget. Thank you. That was super interesting. So, just to wrap things up, thank you for coming on. But is there anything that I missed? Any shout outs, any fun facts that you want to say?
I do want to hype up my man's Crowded Places because I am also collabing with him.
Okay.
Got a special project coming up that he's going to be putting out. So I'm gonna be doing some artwork with him. So yeah, that's to be coming soon. I think that's coming late this month, early next month, something like that. So yeah.
Crowded Places. All right, Crowded Places. That's my dog. So you got some stuff coming out with him. Anything else? Because after this, I'm gonna say my little slogan.
That's all I got for you, homie.
All right, Yumi, thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking the time out, sharing
Thank
so much
you.
about your life. Yeah. Uh Stay tuned for her podcast coming, all her projects with Chlorophyll Collins and Crowded Places. We got a lot to look forward to. So that was Yumi, and this is the Cool Hand Podcast. Something you got to deal with. Easy.